Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being with us this afternoon. So we hope that you are enjoying the very first Devoxx US and you had a lot of fun with all the sessions that you attend during those first 2 days. During this session, we are going to speak about Eclipse Che. So Florent and myself, Stévan, are going to introduce Che. We will do a live demo, and we will speak a little bit about the Workspace portability, which is one of the core values of Eclipse Che. So if we have to think a little bit about the way we are working today, we are all facing problems with the configuration of a developer environment. We are facing problems because we are working on multiple projects, so we have various technologies, and we have to switch from one context with a certain set of dependencies to another context with another set of dependencies. So sometimes it's having some conflicts. We are also working in teams, so it's all good with style. We are all different, but it's all good, and we have all different tastes. So some of us prefer to speak to use keyboard shortcuts in the editor, and some of us prefer to click on buttons. Some of us also prefer to go into the terminal as well. So it really depends. So we are spending a lot of time to configure our workspace, and in general, when we want to onboard new developers to our project, we write some documentation or some scripts, but all of this is really manual, it's error prone, and we are losing a lot of time. Sometimes it is just hours, but in general, and if you take that from an enterprise point of view, it's days or weeks. So there is a problem, and why can't we have anyone at any time being able to contribute to a project without having to install anything on his machine? So if we think about what is needed to make a contribution, you have on one side the IDE, the project's sources, and the runtime. And by runtime, I mean all the dependencies that you need in order to build, to code, to test, and to run your project. And today, the workspaces are including only projects and configuration. And you have the IDE on another side, and you have the runtime dependencies that you are installing on your local machine in order to be able to work. With Che, we are redefining the concept of a workspace. And a Che workspace will provide its own IDE. It will be a browser IDE. We will provide the project's files, and we will also have, inside of the workspace, the runtimes dependencies. So you will have everything that you need in order to be able to build, to code, to test, and to run your projects. How we do that? So inside of Che workspaces, we are bringing Docker containers, and inside of those Docker containers, you will have all the dependencies that you need. They will be pre-configured for you, for the project. So it can be a single machine for the workspace, or it can be also multi-machine. So you can have inside of your workspace multiple containers, one that you will use to code, one which will have the database, for example, that you will use for executing your project, and other containers which you can use for different parts of your workflow. So the projects, they are directly mounted into the workspace runtime. They rely on the Docker containers that you define for the workspace. And inside of the workspace, you will define a set of commands, and the commands, they are scripts that are executed as processes inside of the workspace runtime. So if you want a command to build your project, you will define an MVN clean install, for example, and it will be injected inside of the Workspace runtime directly. So as I said just before, the Workspace are providing their own browser IDE. So this way, we are sure that anyone will not need to install any IDE. It will be provided with the Workspace. But you can still use any IDE that you want. So you can use IntelliJ, or you can use Eclipse if you want. You will connect to the Workspace over SSH. So this is how our browser IDE is looking. And you can use this one, but you can also use the other ones if you want. So the workspaces are hosted in Che server, and Che server is doing the orchestration of all the workspaces and all the containers that you are using inside of your workspaces. So that was a quick introduction. Now I will give the hands to Florent, which will introduce Che live with a small demo.
Thank you, Stévan. So for the demo, I already have an Eclipse Che running on my local computer. As you can see in my dashboard, I have no workspace. So the first step, I will create a new workspace and import my project inside this workspace. I will zoom in for you. Okay. So as Stévan said, the first time you have to select your runtime because you need to select all the tools that you need for your project. For this, you have the choice. You can pick up predefined selected stack. So for example, if you want to start with Java, you can click on Java. If you do .NET, C++, Android, Go. If you want to define your own stack, you can go in stack authoring. And here you can enter your own Docker file or Docker compose file. And it will define all your runtime.
So it's actually very easy to get a workspace if you already Dockerized your project.
In my case, I pick up a Java workspace. And then I start the workspace. So what it will do is that it will create and download the, in this case, the Ubuntu image. So it may take some time. And it will download all the Docker runtime that I need to for my example. So here, the Docker image is downloaded on my computer. And then it starts now the Workspace agent. And with the Workspace agent, I'm able to communicate from my browser to the Docker container. It takes some time. And I'm ready. So here, we can see that we have a terminal. And in this terminal, I can enter any command. And we can see here we are on Linux, but my computer is a Mac. So we are connected inside the Docker container. My next step is to import a project. And I will import Java Spring application. So it is cloning my application from GitHub, importing it. So here we can see that we have our Java file. Like in any IDE. So you have all that you have in any IDE. You can do code completion. It's an IDE, but it's in my browser. And as Stévan said, we have commands. So here we have a command used to run Tomcat and deploy my web application. But you can define as many commands as you want. When I started my command here, okay, I will stop it. We can see here that we have preview URL. So it means that when my application will be built, it will deploy my application to the Tomcat running inside my Docker container. And then I need to connect to the Tomcat inside my Docker container. The preview URL is providing the URL to connect from my computer to the Docker container. So here, the application is starting. And here, if I connect to this app, I can use my application. Of course, you may have the refactoring as well. The idea now is that we are a web-based cloud IDE. And the idea is, can I do some debug stuff? So I will add a breakpoint. It's gray. And I will connect now my debugger. So it's running on the 80 port. Now I'm connecting to the debugger. The breakpoint is no longer gray. It's blue. It means that the breakpoint is enabled. So now I come back to my application. And I will enter Stévan again. But I don't have the output because I'm in my debugger. And I can change the value. And I resume. And here we can see the new value. So we can see here that with the web-based Cloud IDE, we are able to debug a simple Java program, but we can debug, in fact, any Java program very quickly and very easily.
We are also providing a debugger for GDB and Node.js as well, and PHP. PHP debugger has been built by Zen team. So it's the Zen debugger that you will find inside of Che.
I think it's all for the demo.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have seen, we can pick up any runtime that we want because we are Docker-based. So if you want some specific tools, you just have to install these tools inside your Docker containers. It's collaborative. For example, if I take my Workspace, I have on my browser a link. If I give this link to another people, the other people will get the same Workspace with the same runtime and the same commands. So it's pretty easy to collaborate on a program. It's programmable because you can find and you have some REST API to create a workspace. So you can create workspace by curl commands if you want. It's versionable and extensible. You can have many plugins that you plug inside Eclipse Che. So for example, here is the base of all the plugins available inside the Eclipse Che, but the list is growing. So for example, currently we have the Red Hat team doing some work on OpenShift connector. So to be able to deploy all your workspaces with OpenShift and not anymore with Docker. And we have tools and plugins for the JavaScript stuff, the PHP stuff, etc. Another part interesting in Eclipse Che is the language server protocol. So this protocol allows you to connect language server protocol implementation to Eclipse Che. And this server provides you, for example, the code completion for any it supports any language. So for example, we have some language server protocols for PHP, C#, R, XX, but you can define your own language server protocol implementation, plug this implementation inside Eclipse Che, and then you will have the code completion for your language. And for this, we are working with Microsoft and Red Hat. So I will let Stévan conclude.
Yeah, thank you, Florent. So you saw that the workspaces are really different from the ones that you are used to work with for now. They embed a browser IDE, which allow to work to be used at any place where you will have a browser. You will have all the runtimes dependencies, which will be there as well. So now, really, it makes the workspaces really easy to be portable. And if we think about one of the benefits and one of the value that that are provided by the Che workspaces, it's really about simplifying the onboarding experience of new developers inside of a workspace. So we want to make a developer ready to go without having to do all those setup and configuration steps that we are used to do. And to do that, we have a feature which is called Che. It's a flow to provide the developer workspace in few seconds. It starts from a Che file. The Che file is a recipe which have all the instructions and all the configuration parameters that allow Che to rebuild a developer workspace. And it will provide the browser IDE, configure it. It will also provide the runtimes. It will configure the runtimes as well. And it will have the projects inside. So the only thing that you have to do if you are a developer is that you do a git clone of the repository and you do a docker run Eclipse Che dir up, and it will spin up Eclipse Che, and it will boot a new workspace, which will be ready to work, and the sources will be synced with your local clone. So when you do some changes within Eclipse Che, you will see the changes on your local machine, and it will be completely synced. So if you are doing some other changes with another tool, it will be also visible inside of Che. So this feature is called Che dir, and the Che file syntax, which is used at the very beginning, is very simple. So it has the workspace configuration that you can see at the very top. We define the runtime that you can use. Actually, if you already have a Docker file for your project, it will use that Docker file as the workspace runtime. And you will be able to predefine some commands which will be available for other developers. So that's cool. That's running on your local machine. But how easier it could be if it was just clicking on a link? Because it's a web-based tool, we can have this ability to instantiate a developer workspace on demand, just by calling a URL, which will then have all the instructions that are needed in order to rebuild the developer workspace. So here it's what we did. So we put behind this image, we put a link. And this link, if I click on it, is starting a new workspace, which is running remotely. So it will start the workspace runtime. It will inject the workspace agent for all the developer services that we need inside of the workspace. Yeah.
Just a quick question, because it's like we have the workspaces hosted on a Docker container. However, if I need to get the build artifacts out to like run on a local machine, how would I?
You can. So you can use SSH if you want to connect directly inside of the Docker container, or you can have a sync mechanism, otherwise connect on your local machine. But you can also download. You can actually, when you are here, you have the access to everything that is inside of
the
file system of your workspace runtime. So here I just click on a button and I get my workspace. So I'm ready to work. I have my project, which is here, and I have the commands, and I'm able to build my project and to see it running. So if you are a little bit like us, you see a lot of projects on GitHub, and you don't really have the time to try all of them. So you star them, or you put them into your browser favorites, but you never try them because you don't have the time. So here it's really convenient because it's allowing you to test the project without having to install anything on your machine, so it will not break any of the dependencies that you already install on your local machine, and it will be completely isolated. So the workspace will be created on demand for that use case. So the factory, so this capability is called the factory. It works with a remote Che. It works also with Che on OpenShift. So the Red Hat team, as Florent said, is working on making Che running on OpenShift and using OpenShift containers as well. Or it works with CodeNV. CodeNV is the enterprise version of Eclipse Che. It adds user management, scalability, and security to Eclipse Che. So this concept of factory allows to badge some open source projects. So if you are an open source project, you can provide to the contributors a ready to go and a ready to use complete developer workspace. And as it is just a URL, it is very simple to integrate it with any of the tools that you can use. So you can actually integrate it with Jira to allow pre-commit code reviews, for example. Or you can have that integrate inside of Jenkins. And when you have a build failure with Jenkins, it will generate a specific workspace configuration, which will have the information about what was the failure and which files are having some errors. So when we will open the workspace, we will directly open the files where we have errors. So this way it's easy to fix. So that's the introduction for Eclipse Che. You can find the sources of the project on github/eclipse/che. We have an IRC channel, a dev list as well. And of course, on our website, you will find all the getting start guides, the way to download, and all the documentation as well.